Good morning. All right. I was in James Forman seminar, Race, Class, and Punishment. However, I'm going to start off with a quote from Brigida's seminar. And it's an adaptation of my favorite comic book in the film, and that's the 1989 movie Batman. In that movie, the iconic Jack Nicholson has a quote, and he says, "You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight?" That is me. Every day I go to work and I dance with the devil. But to me, the devil isn't my students. The devil is the Department of Juvenile Justice. Because my school is located inside a juvenile correctional facility. And it's hard as a teacher because we know education comes first. But in Department of Juvenile Justice, they quickly tell you education is third. Safety is number one, legal is number two. And that's hard as a teacher, to be told that what you do is third in the eyes of everything that they do, especially when their policies conflict with educational best practices. For example, I had a 14-year-old student, and I was picking with him one day, and I was like, "Man, you need a hug." He's like, "I ain't had a hug in 6 years." I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, my mother died when I was 8, and I haven't had a hug in 6 years." Now, not the teacher, but the human in me just wanted to pick the young man up and just give him a big hug. However, DJJ regulations say there's no contact allowed between teachers and students, and all I could do was give him a fist bump. And I tell you that story to put my unit within context, because what I want to do is I want to teach my students how to be advocates for themselves and everything that they go through within the DJJ system. So I wrote the original title of my unit was Social Advocacy from Within. I was reading the books on social advocacy, on the prison system. I'm gonna teach my kids how to make a change. Luckily, I had the support of my principal, and even more lucky, I had the support of the detention supervisor, who is a big advocate for children's rights. And in DJJ, someone like that is rare. But on that Thursday of the intensive session, my principal called, and she told me, "I got bad news for you. Our detention center supervisor has gotten a promotion, so we're getting someone else. So I don't know what you're working on, but you need to be careful to navigate these waters that we're working in." And so I then had to change the whole social advocacy idea, but I still said, I'm gonna figure out how to get this in. And so I changed the title of my unit to Analyzing the System, the Juvenile Justice System in Virginia. And so I still wanted to get that social advocacy piece in. And so luckily this year in Virginia, the Virginia Department of Education and History is moving from standardized tests to performance-based assessments, where students have to basically create a new product from the facts and information they're given. Because in reality, the old way of teaching history is out. Kids don't need to know facts and dates. They got the 3 best teachers on earth for that. That's Mr. Google, Ms. Siri, and Ms. Alexa. And that gives them all the facts they need. But we as teachers, what we do is we have to teach them how to sort through those facts. Because to quote our president, we do live in the era of fake news. You know, not the news he thinks is fake, but there's a lot of fake news out there. So we have to teach our kids how to distinguish between facts, fiction, primary, secondary sources. And so I originally started to teach a unit on analyzing sources, but the title of that unit was The Life of Martin Luther King. And I chose Martin Luther King because he's a nonviolent hero. Most of my students are with me because they've committed a violent act. And so I wanted them to idolize someone who advocated for things that they aren't used to or hadn't done in their past. And so once we finished that unit on MLK, I began my actual unit and by reading the book Race to Incarcerate. As we read the book, we read discussion questions for each chapter, but we also had another theme we added, is what would MLK do? And that was generating a lot of thought within the kids. Also added another theme to my unit, and that was the role of the media in creating Black criminality stereotypes. That it just happened to be the lesson I was teaching the day I was being filmed for a local media, by the local media. It was a coincidence, not that I would do anything like that on purpose or anything. But I'm halfway through my unit, but I'm also seeing the seeds that I planted within my students beginning to grow, and I'm excited to see what the finished product will be. Well, at our school this year, we tell the kids we have a culture of high expectations, and we want you to do your best, and we expect the best from you. But in a culture of high expectations, everyone is held accountable. My kids felt that one of the teachers in the building was not being accountable, that they were not doing their job. And now DJJ has this policy, as an educator, I hate it. But if a student doesn't want to do work, they can just put their head down, as long as they're not causing the disruption. I don't like the policy, but hey, that's where I work. Well, the kids decided when they got to this teacher's class, all of them would put their head down every day and not do work. So I walk by the class, I'm like, what is going on in there? Then the next day, kids put their head down, refuse to do work. And so this generated a conversation with the teacher of what could they do better to help serve them and hold them to a culture of high expectations. And when they had this conversation, the kids were all excited because they actually did something and it worked. As a matter of fact, one of my students walked by me on his way back. He's like, yeah, Mr. Rob, we did it. We did some nonviolent civil disobedience up in this piece. We MLK, But that made me smile. It made me happy because they were getting it. And also, but the whole point was teaching those kids how to express themselves. And not only is it working in the school, it's working throughout the facility. For example, the other week, we were working on the pods with the kids, and one student, he had caught a facility charge where he had to be in his room for 8 hours. He didn't like it. So he was banging on the door, kicking the door, and I was in there, I was like, oh, I hate this. I know what's gonna happen. Because they put all the rest of the kids in their room, all the counselors, well, they call them counselors to be politically correct. They're really guards, They come in, and so I left the pod because I know what's gonna happen. They're gonna physically restrain this kid to stop him from damaging property. And so as I'm sitting outside the pod, one counselor comes out, the other guy comes out, and they're calm and reserved. And I'm like, that's not usually how this situation goes. And then the supervisor comes out, and he looks at us, he's like, man, y'all teachers are making us real calm and therapeutic around here. He was saying that jokingly, but that made me feel good. I was like, what happened? Well, he felt he shouldn't be in his room. And when we went in there, he told me what he had done, how he felt that was not an 8-hour charge, and that he shouldn't be in his room. And I listened to him, and I only gave him a 2-hour charge. And so that made me feel good, that the kids are now learning how to speak up for themselves. So I'm really excited to get to the end of my unit and see what product the kids will give me. Because really, it's really hard being a kid nowadays. As adults, we always try to tell kids, do what I say, but we don't understand how hard it is being a kid. Kids are given an abundance of information due to technology that they don't have the academic or mental maturity to understand. And so my job is to teach the most vulnerable kids of our society how to express themselves and make a difference, which was the original point of my unit. So in closing, I'll start with a quote. I like to end with a quote. I have a post up in my class, and it's a quote from the late 20th century poet, Tupac Shakur. But it also gives me, it's one of my mottos that I live by every day. And it says on that poster, I know it seems hard sometimes, but remember one thing. Through every night, there's a bright day after that. So no matter how hard it is, get up, stick your chest out, keep your head up, and handle it. Thank you.